It never starts with a door slam or a shouting match. It starts in the smallest, quietest moment. Maybe you're sitting across from them at the kitchen table. The light is soft, the coffee is still warm, and the conversation was normal until it wasn't. You say one sentence, one you didn't think twice about, and suddenly their face goes blank. Their eyes stop meeting yours. Their presence shifts, like a light switch snapping off. You ask, "Hey, are you okay?" Nothing. You try again. Still nothing. Their silence isn't peaceful. It's sharp, pressurized, a quiet so heavy it presses against your ribcage. And inside your chest, something ancient wakes up. A jolt of panic, a tightening in your throat, a desperate need to fix whatever just happened. Because this isn't space. This isn't cooling off. This is a door closing, a connection severed, a sudden, chilling absence where warmth used to be. And you feel every second of it, not just in your mind, but in your nervous system. Why does a moment like this hurt so much? Why does silence feel louder than anger? Why can the quiet between two people feel like a threat? Because sometimes, silence isn't empty at all. It's engineered. Before we go any deeper, we need to draw a clean line between two very different behaviors that often get mistaken for each other. There is needing space, a healthy, human part of emotional regulation. When someone needs space, they usually say so. It sounds like, "I'm overwhelmed, I need 30 minutes to calm down, and then we can talk." It's communicated, it has a time frame, and the intention is repair. Space is a pause meant to protect the relationship, not punish it. And then there's the silent treatment. The silent treatment is the opposite in every way. It's unannounced, abrupt, and complete. No explanation, no time frame, no roadmap back to connection. Just a sudden disappearance, physical or emotional, that leaves you suspended in uncertainty. And its intention is not repair, it's control. This is where most people get confused. So let's add one more distinction: silent treatment versus stonewalling. In Gottman's research, stonewalling happens when someone becomes emotionally flooded, their nervous system shuts down, and they literally can't respond. It's a biological freeze state, not a strategy. But the silent treatment? That's deliberate. It's calculated. It's meant to make you chase, apologize, and question your own reality. Science gives us language for why it hurts so much. Research on ostracism shows that when you're ignored, the same neural circuits that register physical pain, especially the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, light up as if you've been injured. Your brain interprets silence as danger, as abandonment, as a threat to your survival. Because, for thousands of years, being cast out from the group meant death. So no, you're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. Your body is responding exactly as it was designed to. Because this kind of silence isn't a pause, it's a wound. When someone you care about suddenly goes silent, the first thing that collapses isn't the relationship, it's your sense of safety. Your mind starts racing, your stomach drops, your chest tightens in that familiar way you can't quite explain. You check your phone, then check it again. You replay the last conversation, every sentence, every micro-expression, trying to locate the exact moment everything shifted. It feels irrational, but it's not. It's survival instinct. Because the silent treatment doesn't just leave you waiting. It leaves you uncertain. And uncertainty is the most destabilizing emotional state the human nervous system knows. So you do what so many people do. You apologize even if you're not sure for what. You send the long, emotional paragraph. You explain, over-explain, and then explain again. You try to be kinder, softer, easier to love. You shrink yourself in the hope that it will pull them back. This isn't weakness. This is your attachment system going into overdrive. People with anxious or wounded attachment feel the silent treatment like a punch to the chest. But even securely attached people break under it because this isn't normal conflict. It's an erasure, a removal of connection so complete that your brain interprets it as abandonment. And abandonment, in the human mind, is never just about the present. It echoes. It calls up old wounds, childhood moments when you felt small, unseen, or unworthy of comfort. Silent treatment doesn't just activate fear, it activates memory. That's why the pain feels bigger than the moment. You're not trying to win them back. You're trying to feel safe again. You're trying to make the panic stop. You're trying to prove to yourself that you're still worth staying for. And that's exactly why this tactic works, not because you're weak, but because you're human. To understand why someone uses silence as a weapon, we have to step inside a mindset that operates very differently from yours. Because to them, silence isn't absence, it's strategy. At the surface, 3 motives drive this tactic: power, punishment, and passive aggression. But underneath those motives lies something even darker. A fragile ego, a deep-rooted fear of inadequacy, and a blueprint of relating that was shaped long before you ever entered their life. Let's start with the most obvious one: power. In a relationship, conflict usually requires 2 people, but the manipulator refuses to enter the arena. Instead, they walk out emotionally or physically and force you to fight the battle alone. By doing nothing, they make you do everything. You're the one reaching out, apologizing, analyzing, begging for clarity. They get to sit in the throne of stillness while you scramble for answers. Each unanswered text becomes proof in their mind that they are in control, that you are emotionally dependent, that they can regulate your mood without saying a single word. It's domination disguised as detachment. Then comes punishment. In their internal logic, you committed a crime, disagreed with them, challenged them, expressed a need, or touched one of their insecurities. And instead of communicating like an adult, they retreat into silence as a way of teaching you a lesson. You're supposed to feel the sting, you're supposed to feel guilty, you're supposed to break first. This is conditioning, intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological mechanism that keeps people hooked on slot machines, unpredictable cycles of coldness and warmth. One day they're affectionate, the next day they vanish. The uncertainty becomes addictive. When they finally come back, the relief is intoxicating and your bond to them grows stronger. But here's the paradox. While the silent treatment feels like a display of strength, it is almost always rooted in cowardice. A manipulator fears real confrontation because confrontation requires vulnerability. It requires saying things like, "What you said hurt me," or "I felt insecure when that happened." Their ego can't tolerate that level of exposure. Shame and fragility sit right beneath the surface, and silence becomes their armor. It also becomes their mask. If you confront them, they can flip the script instantly. "I'm not doing anything. You're the one overreacting." Now you're not just hurt, you're doubting your own perception. For some, these behaviors come from deeper psychological patterns, especially narcissistic traits. People with narcissistic tendencies use silence to assert superiority. "I decide when you exist in my world." They silence you to devalue you, and then return just in time to hoover you back in. For others, it's learned behavior. They grew up in families where conflict meant withdrawal, icy distance, or emotional exile. Silence became the language of power, the only one they ever learned. But regardless of where it comes from, the impact is the same. Their silence becomes your instability. Their avoidance becomes your anxiety. Their control becomes your self-blame. And that is exactly how they maintain the upper hand, not by being strong, but by making you feel powerless. When the silent treatment becomes more than a tactic, when it becomes a pattern, a reflex, a way of relating, we're no longer talking about bad communication, we're talking about psychological architecture. A deeper, older blueprint that shapes the manipulator long before they ever met you. For many, this blueprint aligns closely with narcissistic dynamics. Not necessarily a clinical diagnosis, but a mindset built on fragile self-worth and an obsessive need for control. Narcissistic individuals don't view silence as avoidance, they view it as dominance. Ignoring you reinforces their internal hierarchy. I am above you, I decide when you matter. In the narcissistic cycle, idealize, devalue, discard, silence is the scalpel of the devaluation phase. It cuts deep, clean, and quietly. The goal is to destabilize you just enough that you begin to question yourself, not them. But the most dangerous part isn't the silence itself, it's what comes next, the hoover. After starving you of connection, a narcissistic mind knows the exact moment to reach out a short text, a casual, hey, a breadcrumb of warmth. And your nervous system, starved for relief, floods with dopamine. This isn't love, it's neurochemical captivity. A cycle of cortisol, anxiety, followed by dopamine, relief, that forms what psychologists call a trauma bond. It's not your fault that it feels addictive. Your brain is reacting the way any human brain would. But not everyone who weaponizes silence is driven by narcissistic traits. Some learned it long before they could speak. In many households, especially emotionally rigid or high-conflict families, silence is the currency of power. A parent goes cold for days. A sibling withdraws affection as punishment. A caretaker uses distance to control behavior. The child learns, love can be withdrawn, connection can be taken away. Silence is how people win. Fast forward into adulthood, and this learned pattern becomes the only conflict strategy they know. They're not withholding because they're strong, they're withholding because nobody ever modeled another way. Below all these patterns lies something even more fundamental, a deep, unspoken shame core. People who rely on silent treatment often carry an internal belief: if you see who I truly am, you will reject me. So they reject first. They withdraw first. They punish first. Silence becomes a shield against the terror of being exposed or being wrong. Admitting hurt or insecurity feels unbearable, so they hide behind distance. This is where we differentiate pathology from overwhelm. Some people don't weaponize silence, they simply shut down. Emotional flooding can render a person temporarily nonverbal. Their prefrontal cortex goes offline, and they physically cannot speak. But here's the difference. When the storm passes, they feel remorse. They reach back out. They repair. A true manipulator doesn't. They don't repair, they reset the cycle. They don't feel remorse, they feel justified. To them, silence isn't a collapse. It's control. And that's the root wound beneath it all. A person so terrified of vulnerability, so afraid of emotional exposure, that they would rather destroy connection than risk being seen. The silent treatment never arrives out of nowhere. It may feel sudden, but if you look closely, the warning signs are always there, subtle, quiet, almost invisible unless you know what to look for. The first sign is the shift in tone. Their replies become shorter, sharper, more clipped than usual. A warm "yeah" becomes a cold "fine." A conversation that once flowed now feels like you're pulling words out of a sealed room. Then comes eye avoidance. They don't look at you the same way. Their gaze slides past you, around you, through you, anywhere but at you. Eye contact disappears not because they're calm, but because they're preparing to disconnect. A third sign, emotional withdrawal. They stop sharing their thoughts, their day, their reactions. The emotional presence that once felt open now feels gated. It's not quiet, it's distant. And distance is always step one of the silent treatment. The fourth sign is subtle but devastating. Scorekeeping. They start mentally collecting your mistakes, or what they interpret as mistakes, storing each one like ammunition. You can feel it in the air, that sense of being monitored instead of loved. And finally, there is the unexplained tension. A heaviness you can't name, a shift in their breathing, their posture, their energy. Something is wrong, but when you ask, "Is everything okay?" the answer is always a flat, "I'm fine." These signs don't mean you did something wrong. They mean the other person is already retreating into a pattern they've used for years, one that turns emotional absence into power. And recognizing these signs early is the first step, not to prevent their silence, but to protect yourself from it. Once you understand the psychology behind the silent treatment, the question becomes, what do you do when you're trapped inside it? Most people do the same thing: chase, apologize, over-explain, panic. Not because they're weak, but because their nervous system is begging for safety. But every desperate text, every voice note, every attempt to fix it teaches the manipulator one thing: this works. So the first step in breaking the spell is simple but not easy. Do not play the role they've assigned to you. Instead of chasing, you respond once clearly, calmly, and with dignity. This is the one-time statement. Step 1. Identify the behavior. I've noticed you're not responding and choosing to withdraw. Step 2. Express your feelings. When that happens, I feel shut out and disrespected. Step 3. Set the boundary. I'm open to a respectful conversation whenever you're ready, but I don't engage with silent punishment. Then you stop. Completely. No follow-ups, no pleading, no emotional paragraphs. This does two things at once. 1. It names the tactic, which removes its invisibility. 2. It removes the emotional fuel that makes the tactic work in the first place. This is the heart of the grey rock method. You become emotionally neutral, calm, grounded, unreactive, not cold, not cruel, simply steady. They can no longer extract panic, guilt, or fear from you. But breaking the spell isn't only about what you don't do, it's also about what you do with yourself. You regulate your own system. Box breathing to settle the panic. Grounding 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to return to the present. Journaling what your mind is telling you and what's actually true. Reaching out to safe people, not the one withholding safety from you. And most importantly, you ask yourself the question so many avoid. Is this a one-time rupture or a pattern that defines the relationship? Because if someone escalates when you stop reacting, if they punish harder, disappear longer, or retaliate emotionally, that's not miscommunication. That's a system of control. Healthy love doesn't require you to shrink. Healthy love doesn't require you to chase. Healthy love certainly doesn't require you to endure silence as punishment. Breaking the spell isn't about getting them back. It's about getting yourself back. Silence, when used as a weapon, is designed to make you forget who you are. It turns your voice into a question mark, your needs into inconveniences, your worth into something that feels negotiable. It makes you believe that connection can be taken away at any moment, that love is something you must earn, fix, or beg for. But here's the truth. Your value does not disappear because someone refuses to acknowledge it. Your voice does not lose power because someone chooses not to hear it. And your presence does not become smaller because someone pretends it doesn't matter. You cannot control their silence, but you can control what it turns you into. You can choose boundaries. You can choose clarity. You can choose dignity over desperation, truth over confusion, self-respect over self-blame. And eventually, you realize something profound. Their silence was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of their wounds. Finding your voice again isn't a dramatic moment. It's a quiet return to yourself the moment you decide that you will no longer shrink to fit inside someone else's instability. If this episode helped you feel seen, understood, or a little less alone, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next deep dive into the psychology of relationships, healing, and emotional power. And if you've lived through the silent treatment or broken free from it, share your story in the comments. Your words might be the reason someone else finally recognizes their own truth. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be respected. You deserve to come home to yourself again.